My name is Christopher Lomadou. I am currently a Sergeant First Class or an E7 in the United States Army. I've been serving over 15 and a half years now. That's where I deployed to Iraq my first 2 tours with the Army's first ever Stryker Brigade. It's a big green armored vehicle with 8 wheels, and my battalion was the first one. My company actually, company is smaller, was actually the first one to ever get the Army Stryker. And we got to field test it. We got to take it to Iraq for the very first time. And back in 2007, and we got there in March of 2007, we got orders to report to Bakuba, Iraq, which is 35 miles northeast of Baghdad. Now, this was during the time of the surge, which a lot of people probably remember. During that time, the surge of, I believe it was, I can't remember, like 20 or 30,000 soldiers got pushed over there to help calm out down Iraq during that time. A lot of the number of soldiers were pushed to Baghdad because that was the main effort. They really wanted to quiet down Baghdad. Well, it really wasn't reported on too much, and even us, we were currently in Baghdad. We were just north of Baghdad, staying at a FOB called Taji. When we got orders to go to Bakuba to help out the American unit there, so when we get to Bakuba, there was an American unit there. There was a 1 brigade, armored brigade, like Bradley's fighting vehicles and tanks, serving the city, 1 battalion. And we found out really fast when we got to, it was called FOB Warhorse. It was a FOB we were staying on. Found out they took a lot of casualties. They've had a lot of killed and a lot of wounded. Try to own the whole city. Our first day outside the wire, as we say, we call outside the wire when we leave the FOB. We had a lieutenant from the unit that was already there, staying there. He's been there 6 months. Their unit was 6 months before us. He decided to take us on what we call a ride seat ride. So pretty much he takes us around and shows us, points out different things, tells us experiences and all the good stuff of what they experienced. So kind of giving us a good back brief of what's going on in the area. But what we didn't know that very first day outside the wire is some of the places that the lieutenant was taking us were considered red. The roads were red. That means they're most likely filled with IEDs, and no Americans have driven on those roads for a long time. When we got there, they estimated about 3,000 fighters of Al-Qaeda in this town. So we get the phone call of a catastrophic kill. And I remember my guys in my squad looked at me, they yelled up, I'm sending a hatch as we're racing to go help Bravo Company, which we were on the east side of town, and Bravo Company was on the west side. So I had to go down, I just cringed down and explain to my guys, I'm like, that means the Stryker is unable to move. It's done. It ain't fixable, it's done. And they're like, oh, we haven't experienced that yet. And what happened was, en route to get over to the other side of the city, we had to cross a bridge. There was a big river that split the city in 2. We realized all the local nationals, mostly kids and women, they'd stopped in shock and just stared at us as we're driving down the road. 4 Army Strykers. And you take notice of that. And usually in experience, anybody's been in Iraq, they know if you turn down a street and everybody vanishes, that means you're about to get shot at because they know bad guys are hiding in wait for you. So that's kind of a telltale sign. But these people pretty much stopped what they were doing and stared at us in shock. Like the whole town just got quiet and they started staring at us. So that kind of was an indicator that why are they staring at us? That's like they'd never seen us before. So that told us right there that nobody's been on these roads for a very long time. When we got over to what was called Katoon, which was the east side where Bravo Company was currently doing their ride seat ride with another lieutenant from the unit that was there. The lieutenant was showing him around the area, and he pretty much took him into what we found out later was the Al-Qaeda headquarters where all their leaders lived and stayed at. Apparently when they were down the road, one of my good buddy of mine, Marker, he was a squad leader in that platoon. He remembers as we're sitting there, the lieutenant's on the radio, the lieutenant from the other units, explaining stuff to him, like pointing stuff out, explaining their experiences in that neighborhood they've had in the past, kind of firefights and what they've experienced in that area. And Marker looks over at his gunner, the soldier sitting next to him that operates the 50 cal. He looks over at him and he realizes there's a school nearby, and he can see over the wall, and all the little kids are plugging their ears. And he just looked over at his gunner and goes, why the kids plug in their ears? And that's when the Stryker in the second order, there was like 2 Strykers up from him, he was in the back Stryker, the rear Stryker. The second Stryker in order of movement got hit with a deep buried. Took all 4 front tires off, flipped the striker on its side. It killed the driver immediately and wounded all 6 soldiers in the back. So we race over there. It's chaotic. There's small arms fire everywhere. When I say small arms fire, it means like a machine gun or an AK-47 or a rifle or something like that, small arms. We saw a few RPGs, rockets flying through the air in the distance. And my first ever experience of a low fly by a F-15 scared the bejeebus out of me. As we just were cresting into the neighborhood right close where Bravo Company was at, our battalion commander ordered a low fly, which is pretty much a show of force. It just kind of scares everybody and puts their heads down, and pretty much is a nice way of the jet flying really low to the rooftops and breaking the sound barrier. It pretty much tells everybody to play nice and be quiet for a second. And it does work, because I got quiet for a second and my heart stopped beating for a second. As we pushed into the neighborhood, it was an opening off the left-hand side. There was a dirt road going straight. A lot of empty, kind of derelict buildings around the area. And there's 2 Bradley vehicles sitting there, but they're all buttoned up and nobody's sticking out of the hatch. The strikers, we stick out of the hatch and we're kind of just hanging out, pulling security. And my PL, his truck was in front of me. I was the second truck, the order of movement. And he was like, hey, let's push out forward and get better security, past the Bradleys, kind of layer of security, which is a good thing. As soon as we came out into that dirt road, my gunner off to my right got my attention. He goes, hey, look. We looked over and there was the Bravo Company striker up on its side, and it was just all jacked up looking, and we could see it right from there. It was like 60 meters up from us, and we're like, oh, wow, that's pretty bad. We never experienced something like that, deep buried, as they're called, a deep buried ID. So just as my PL's going straight down the road, he went about 100 yards. We're in the military, we like saying meters, but roughly the same thing. And I remember I just looked at my gunner, and I was like, this is a really bad spot. Something just told me, I'm like, this is a really bad spot. It's open, it's a dirt road. A lot of the buildings are old and empty. And this is a good ambush spot. It's a good spot to attack, because there's no civilians anywhere. There's really nothing that the bad guys can damage and would anger the local citizens. So it's a good spot for them to do attack. Well, just as I got that out of my mouth, I just said, this is a really bad spot. My PL's truck blew up in front of me. He got hit with an ID. And luckily, it went through right behind the engine, kind of took out the transmission, but it left a hole about yay big, about the size of my chest maybe, to the bottom of the striker all the way to the top of the striker, clean hole. And I remember took us a while to get that striker out of there. We had to wait to get another striker come around the corner and hook up a tow bar, which is the nice things about striker fighting vehicles is we can tow each other out. Like Bradleys and tanks, they can't tow, a Bradley can't tow a Bradley and a tank can't tow a tank. So the nice thing about a striker is you can tow another striker out of the area if you need to. Took us about 30 to 40 minutes to get all the guys off that striker and get them evac'd and get them back to base and get checked out. Took us a little while longer to get the striker out of there. So we went around the area. We started going in the houses and questioning people, because now we just had 2 strikers get catastrophically killed, or the strikers anyway. We had 1 KAA and a total of 14 wounded the very first day outside the wire. So we lost 1 and had 14 wounded. And a few of them, luckily, returned to duty and came back. So we're a little angry, a little frustrated, so we're going around talking to people and trying to get answers. And I actually had a 10-year-old boy who was honest with me, and he was just like, yeah, the one out here, the first striker got struck, he pointed to that one and said, yeah, 2 men, or it was 4 men, came out 2 days prior, and it only took them 40 minutes. They had shovels, they put the bomb in, and they were done within 40 minutes. And they buried it and it was ready to go. And I was like, wow. It took them 40 minutes. I did not know that. I thought it took them a little longer, but they're quick. They're trained. We remember guys, buddies, we lost on anniversaries of their death, and stuff like that. We talk about them. But it's just something you never forget. And, I tell funny stories here and there of experiences over there. But when it comes talking to about the hard and graphical stuff, for me personally, I can't talk about every veteran, but for me personally, I like to just keep that to myself, because I feel like that's my cross to bear. Like, why would I want to share, not fun things, mean, nasty things, or just disgusting things, or scary things? I just don't want to share that with someone else, because I just feel like that's my cross to bear. Like, why would I want to share that? But I think that's the main reason why a lot of people, a lot of veterans don't like to open up a whole lot. Because we we go over there so other people don't have to experience stuff like that. I don't want my kids and families to experience stuff like that. I'm glad I did, and they don't have to. So that's why I did it. And I'm proud of it. And I couldn't have done it with my wife, my kids, and my family support. They totally helped me out, sending me letters, goodies, all the cereal, all the good stuff, the stuff you don't get over there for a very long time. And I just remember last week, I'm walking up the street going, wow, all this stuff happened near this area. You know, you wouldn't even think about stepping foot on this road. And here we are walking up the road, people, civilians, kids, walking up the road, and there's not a shot fired. There's no bombs going off. In broad daylight. It was crazy. It was kind of terrifying a little bit at first, because, you know, all the experiences before. But we can honestly say when we left, we made a difference. We had a lot of, you know, guys not come home, a lot of guys get wounded. And it was a really hard fight. But at the end of the day, we can say we actually made a difference. We actually gave a neighborhood, gave a whole city back to its people and freed them up from the grips of Al-Qaeda, which is something we're all extremely proud of.
Now I don't really care what you call me, just as long as